Okay, sorry about that. Let's see if I can find anybody else. Yeah, my live stream died. Hopefully you didn't catch me swearing on camera. I have no way of telling because it just sort of died midway. So that's wonderful. Okay, so um, that is completely thrown me off, which is just, fabulous. Okay, let's see. All right. If anybody is watching and is wonderful, could they please? Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay. Hi. Welcome. Hi. It's Friday. It's slightly later. Wow. Slightly later than 1 o'clock. Yeah. Test one, test two. That's right. That's the position I'm in there right now. Yeah. It's slightly later than 1 o'clock. Sorry about that. Hi guys. Um, and yes, I'm Alison Pitt, and we're going to talk about Star Trek. It's great. So I will say that again, this is one of those weeks where the episode of Star Trek Discovery that came out is like meaty. So there are things to say, and I'm going to not say half of them because it's a half-hour show. But it was really interesting, and we will get to that. But we're going to do that in the sort of second half of the show. I've got a few things that I wanted to talk about beforehand, and then hopefully we'll touch on a few things today, and then we'll probably have to sum it up next week because this is the first of a two-parter, Terra Firma Part 1. All right. So I just want to start off by saying hello to everyone. I'm sorry about the switch of the stream. I don't know what happened there. That was just me messing up, so I apologize. Nomi, Paul, Andrew, Zach, BC, Wes, Kaiser. Hello, everyone. I was going to encourage you to put questions in the chat for later or hold them back about Discovery, but honestly, I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer them. This was a week where we had a really, really dense episode. I try to avoid spoilers, and I try to avoid discussing it before I get here because I want to have a fresh take. That sounds really arrogant. But I really couldn't avoid the spoilers this week. And already I can tell you that there are a lot of people out there who are much more knowledgeable about all of the things that got packed into this week's episode than I will be. But hopefully we'll talk about something interesting and you'll appreciate it. All right. So we are I'm going to start off by talking about two stories that you will not have heard about in this week's Daily Star Trek News, but I find it really, really interesting and help contextualize a little bit what's going on in Star Trek. And I can't decide which one I want to talk about first. I'm going to talk about the one that I think is probably boring, and I'm probably going to lose you all first. So I'm really excited about the things that Viacom CBS is doing right now. And I've been told that I have to declare that I actually own some Viacom CBS stock. I bought 5 shares. And I don't consider myself in any way influential on the stock price of Viacom CBS, but I should mention that I do have a financial stake in that company. I did a story yesterday, I think, in yesterday's episode, talking about user profiles in CBS All Access, and that was the one I think that was probably the most accessible of the several stories I have about CBS All Access this week, because it's something that people have been complaining about the CBS All Access service, and it's one of the ways in which it was really sort of a second tier streaming service if you compare it to Netflix or Hulu or any of the other big streaming services. You take for granted that you can do user profiles. Even YouTube. So having them announce that this week was a pretty big deal. I thought it was really interesting. They bundled in the announcement of user profiles when they were talking about family-friendly improvements to the service, which I thought was really weird. I don't see user profiles as an inherently family based, with kids based feature. So for instance, I have really, really shallow taste in entertainment. I mean, we'll just put Star Trek to the side, but like one of my favorite movies of all time is Center Stage, which, by the way, is a Star Trek movie. I'll explain that at some point. But it's a ballet movie, and I don't want my partner's like really cool like a timeline of like really cool old films and stuff. I don't want that being polluted by my like stupid dance movies that I love and all of my like oh God, cheesy Christmas movies and stuff. I just think that user profiles in general, I feel like I'm telling on myself. User profiles in general is just a really good way for me to have a personalized experience to know that like my weird tastes aren't impacting on anybody else. Anyway, they bundled it in with all the kids features, and I actually thought it was really important, and I hope that people find some value out of that. Um, but there's two other stories that I might write about over the weekend, because I never take a day off, but I think they're really important and interesting. And I am not an expert in these things, so I don't know. I'm just not an expert. Number one, CBS All Access have agreed, or Viacom CBS have agreed to carry CBS All Access on the Comcast Xfinity X1 platform. Now, you still have to have a subscription to CBS All Access. So it's not like free. It's not like if you pay for Comcast Xfinity X1, you also get access to all of CBS All Access. But the fact that you as a cable person are basically now having your set-top box be a digital set-top box is kind of that's really interesting. So you've always been able, not always, but you've mostly been able to access CBS All Access on something like an Apple TV or Xbox, PlayStation, Smart TV, something, some kind of device, a set-top device that is digital native, right? That is built for streaming. Now you're also going to be able to do that over the cable system. And I find that I think that's really, really interesting because when we talk about streaming services, generally we think of them as over the top. So something completely separate from cable. And when CBS All Access started, it was an over the top, and they still talk about Showtime as an OTT service. You've got your cable, and then you've got this other thing that's over here that's like the extra enhancement. And they've been lifting content off of terrestrial broadcast and into streaming, and now they're actually putting content back from streaming into traditional broadcast. And I think that's a really smart move. And Viacom CBS, like their MO for the past couple of years, really, and CBS before it was Viacom CBS, is all about just diversifying, which if you ever pay attention to how many different channels Daily Star Trek News is on, I'm a fan of that. And in terms of a company like Viacom CBS, which is big and potentially risky, kind of the stuff that they're kind of doing, making sure that they have good coverage in broadcast, streaming, international, free, ad-supported video on demand, subscription video on demand. They've got films, television. They've done their own production that they put out. They produce for other people. They also buy in things that they broadcast. They've pretty much covered every content and delivery method anywhere. Now that's complicated, but it means that they're if they have more steady income streams, they can flex a little bit more. And where you have something that you want to do strategically in one of them that doesn't make sense on its own, for instance, taking CBS All Access, turning it into Paramount Plus and taking it worldwide, you can support that action with the things that are going on the other channels. So anyway, my point being, CBS All Access going onto the Comcast box is what I think is a really big deal for them and is going to be really good going forward. Now, talking about the Paramount Plus and expansion and the going international and all that other stuff, the other thing that happened this week that is pretty inside baseball, and I don't really understand it all. I'm going to read you a part of it, and you'll see why. Viacom CBS have signed up with a deal with Amazon Web Services, so AWS, and they are going to host and deliver all 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 of their content across the entire Viacom CBS library. They're going to deliver it all from AWS worldwide, which is gigantic. Let me Okay, so I'm gonna read you just a little bit of the press release, and you'll see how quite how dense this information is, and then I'll explain why it makes me excited. Um, as part of the strategic agreement, Viacom CBS will migrate operations for its entire broadcast footprint, which spans 425 linear television channels and 40 global data and media centers, to the world's leading cloud, one of the first such large-scale transformations in the media and entertainment industry. The migration will enable Viacom CBS to drive greater efficiencies and cost savings, simplify access to content for its licensing partners, and reliably deliver new viewing experiences to consumers by broadcasting and streaming content on any device. Viacom CBS will leverage AWS's industry-leading infrastructure and comprehensive cloud capabilities, including serverless, containers, databases, media services, analytics, and machine learning, to build a cloud-based broadcast and media supply chain operating model, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on. It's this press release is like I read it like 3 times, and it was so dense, and it's not something that I'm that familiar with in terms of the technology that's going on. But the key thing to kind of take away from it is the bit where it says drive greater efficiencies and cost savings, which is one thing that they promised to shareholders when they merged last year. And I'm not sure that they've delivered fully on the amount. I can't remember. It was like $300 million that they said they were going to cost save or something. It's just some gigantic number, and I don't think they've achieved that yet. So the fact that they're trying to still live up to that promise of cost savings is yay. But also the simplifying access to content for its licensing partners, which means that for other networks and other channels, other services that might be accessing Viacom CBS, it makes that easier. And reliably deliver new viewing experiences to consumers by broadcasting and streaming content on any device. Now, I'm totally reading into it, but put it in the context of they're going to rebrand to Paramount Plus. They're going to start rolling out Paramount Plus internationally in the Nordics and Latin America early next year, early like Q1 of 2021. And the hope is that eventually, if that goes smoothly, then that will sort of start a waterfall domino effect, mixing my metaphors, domino effect into the rest of Europe and everywhere else. And I think what we're heading towards is that Paramount Plus is a worldwide service that has a more or less unified content portfolio. And having all of their content being delivered through Amazon Web Services is just sort of like greasing that whole my metaphors are being problematic today. I don't know, greasing that big elephant. I don't know. And just making it easier for that to happen. I see this as a move that's going to accelerate the pace that they're able to roll things out in, because they still have to deal with content licensing agreements. They still have to deal with companies and laws and countries. But if they can do this quickly, it will kind of remove a barrier, like a technological barrier, to making that happen faster, which, again, I'm not an expert on it, but that just seems like we're one step closer to getting to no longer having to worry about this whole lower decks international streaming fiasco. And that's only a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So there we go. That's the dump of the stuff that didn't quite make it into daily Star Trek news, but things that I think are really important for Viacom CBS, which of course owns Star Trek, and the fact that Star Trek is the flagship and addresses that one, a couple of really key complaints that Star Trek fans have had recently, which is the accessibility of content on CBS All Access, and also the international distribution, which is, I mean, I don't know how they would assess it internally, but from the outside, it seems like a total, you know the word I want to say, it starts with S, a mess. It's a mess. So there's that. Okay, right. Now that I can take a breath, I'm going to check the chat real quick. And while I'm doing so, I just want to, I think I recognize most of you, and you've probably all heard my spiel before, but if you appreciate what we're doing on Daily Star Trek News, whether you listen to the podcast or the YouTube or the newsletter or whatever, please consider supporting us on Patreon. You can support us from just $1 a month. And also, if you sign up for a whole year, you get 2 months free. So it's a very good deal. And it would help us out a lot. So I appreciate that. Right. You guys chat a lot, so hang on. BC, you have pointed out something. So I'm a little embarrassed that Terra Firma was not something that I like. It should have been obvious from the track listing, the episode listing, that we were gonna go back to. By the way, spoilers. We're probably going to start talking about Discovery in this little next discussion. So if you haven't watched it yet, you might want to log off and come and watch this back in a little while. It completely escaped me that Terra Firma was like the thing that they chant in the Mirror Universe. I can't remember whether that was before or not. I can't remember. Okay. I'm going to come back to the Mirror Universe questions in a little bit. Andrew, so the CBS All Access app is awful. I started watching CBS through Amazon Prime, and it is better. Now, it's interesting that you say that. I actually stopped using the CBS All Access app on the Apple TV because they came out with a bundle deal a while back. Apple TV Plus, if you sign up for CBS All Access, you can get a bundle of CBS All Access and Showtime through this the Apple TV Plus channels feature, and it's the same price. It's $9.99, I believe. So we've done that, and it works fine. It's a little annoying because instinctively I think I need to go to CBS All Access and find what I want to watch, but you can't. You have to go into the Apple TV Plus app and then find the channel and then go. It's a little bit confusing. As a result, I actually, this week, I actually started considering going back to the CBS All Access app, because while you get the content features, or you get the content going through a third party, you don't necessarily get the improvements that they are making to the CBS All Access app, for instance, user profiles. And while I agree with you that up to this point, the CBS All Access app has been lacking, it's really just been good enough to kind of just get you there. I think that going forward, that might not be the case, and you might actually want to go back to the CBS All Access app. We shall see. If you and honestly, if you have not been in the CBS All Access app since the summer, you should try again, because they've added a whole load of new content and they've made some like tweaks to the UI. And of course, I was going to say I can almost guarantee, but actually I can't almost guarantee. There's a chance that they're going to totally revamp the UI when they turn it into Paramount Plus, because they'll, it's a whole new rebranding thing. So I don't know. Paul, you raise a good point, Paul, that user profiles are not a priority for a single user. No, that's true. And I approached this story from a person with 4 people in my household and a cat. She doesn't use CBS All Access, but I think that's because she's a snob. But there's, for me, user profiles are like really, really important and totally integral into a streaming service. But maybe not if you're on your own. So Paul uses Amazon Fire. Joseph uses Roku. Excuse me. I'm really happy with my Apple TV. I've been using them for years, and I think it's great. Um, um, okay. Okay, so we're getting into some more discovery type questions. So I think probably the best thing to do is go ahead and switch over and talk about Star Trek Discovery. All right, so this episode was called Terra Firma Part 1, which I hope is a real Part 1 and not like That Hope Is You Part 1. I'm pretty sure it is because the next episode is Terra Firma Part 2, so we'll see. It's a Mirror Universe episode. Um, you know, I don't know how to sum it up. There are parts that I loved and parts that I hated about what happened this week. I, but overall, I actually really loved it. I think I'm excited to watch it again. I think that when I look back on Discovery, overall, I'm enjoying season 3. There are holes that I can poke in it. That's one of the downsides about doing shows like this is that you kind of feel like you have to poke holes in everything and you can't just like relax into it like a bubble bath. But this one was one that I was just like very early on. I was like, what is what? And then I was like, okay, we'll go with this. And then I just kind of sat back and enjoyed it. So on the whole, really pleased. I'm very excited to see what happens next week for a couple of key reasons, which I will come on to. Now, as per usual, this is a really dense episode, and I don't have the time nor the energy to totally pick it apart, but I wanted to touch on a couple of sort of key things that I thought were worth discussing. And the first one is the entire concept of the mirror universe, which I feel fairly certain I've ranted about before. The mirror universe is so dumb. It just is. It's so dumb. It was dumb when they introduced it in TOS, and it's been dumb every time they go back to it. And I think it works best if they kind of treat it like they know it's dumb, which I think they do a decent job of here. But like the whole mustache twirling and everybody's evil, and like it's so dumb. And I mean, not even talking about the fact that there is no, like we've established pretty well in Star Trek that there isn't a mirror universe. Like there's like it's an infinite number of it's a multiverse, right? It's an infinite number of universes, which also means that there is an infinite number of mirror universes as well. So we don't even know if this is the mirror. We've had this discussion before in season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. So yeah, I think the point I'm trying to make, if you hadn't grasped it, is that the mirror universe is dumb, and every time we go to the mirror universe, it's also dumb. However, what's wonderful is that kind of coming from that baseline, the writers can have a tremendous amount of fun with it if they don't take it too seriously, and I think they did actually a pretty decent job of finding that balance with the writing in this episode. There's some really interesting things going on, and I will talk about some of those in a second. So they've managed to make something that's inherently dumb. They turned it kind of fun, and then they've actually gotten some really interesting concepts out of it without like trying to take it too seriously. So I approve. I can't remember who wrote this episode, but whoever did, they did a good job. So the main sort of theme that I think we're building to here, and keep in mind the larger context of Star Trek, at some point Georgiou is going to leave Discovery and she's going to go and do her own thing in the Section 31 show. And that has always been a lingering problem because Emperor Georgiou is super, super evil. And how are we going to have somebody who's super, super evil leading a Star Trek show as potentially our hero? And I really think that that's what this is heading towards. I suspect that if Georgiou doesn't last to the end of the season, it'll probably be she'll last to the end of Terra Firma Part 2. The writers are setting up a redemption for her. And I'm not really sure that's a good idea. But by the same account, you're kind of in an impossible situation because if you have Michelle Yeoh on your show, you do not want to get rid of her because she's amazing. Um, so yeah, what they're doing here is they're writing in and out. So they've established that Terrans are evil literally by nature. They've established that the traveling through time and also through multiple universes has inflicted her with a Giorgio with a kind of sickness. And now they're giving her a kind of solution where they're demonstrating, and she's demonstrating to herself, that being in the Prime universe has changed her, like, fundamentally. Like, I don't know, like, literally at a molecular level, but also, emotionally and psychologically. Um, what's interesting here is that it's a little bit It's a Wonderful Life, like, she gets to go back and relive a moment in her history, except she's changed history now. It was touch and go there. I mean, obviously, she has new information. The whole bit where, like, she knows that Kelpians are, like, badass now. Um, she killed Stamets, and we know Stamets was still around. I don't know whether Mirror Stamets was already doing his work. Um, I mean, I guess he was, at this point in time in the past in the Mirror Universe. She's killed Stamets now, and that is a significant difference to the Mirror Universe that we knew before. Having said that, we could still be in a different branch, so it might not be like a weird time paradox thing. We don't know. Um, it's interesting the way they've approached it because they've managed to keep her character intact by saying, I've seen the future. We're gonna do something different because that's what I would do. Let's see what happens when I don't do that. So they've kind of given her an in-universe explanation for why that's okay. I'm good with that. But it really does come down to, should she be redeemed? And as a character, absolutely not. She's horrific. I mean, the whole point is that she's horrific. She is like the epitome of the worst of humanity, right? Um, but yeah, it's Michelle Yeoh. If it was anybody but Michelle Yeoh, I would be like, whatever. She's irredeemable. Let's mourn her loss and move on to somebody else who's cooler. But I don't think there is anybody cooler. Um, all right. I slightly lost the plot on that, so I apologize. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to approach this, but it's the Guardian of the Galaxy, right? Or Guardian of Forever. Guardian of the Galaxy is a whole different movie. It's the Guardian of Forever, right? Like, I mean, I think I saw somebody say that online. I was like, what? Carl. Um, the thing is, it could be an Easter egg. So the biggest evidence, if you haven't seen this already, the biggest evidence for why that door is, besides being a mysterious portal out in the middle of nowhere on the edge of the galaxy, the biggest evidence for why that's the Guardian of Forever is the newspaper. So the Star Dispatch is the same newspaper that they used to show when Edith Keeler died, and that could just be an Easter egg, but it could also not. I'm not an expert on the Guardian of Forever, but it seems like it would work, and it also seems totally reasonable that the sphere would know where the Guardian was or something. Also, the Guardian apparently accesses different it's time and dimensions. So, is it real? Is it not? I think you're supposed to wonder that. I don't know. Also, nice to see the return of Paul Gilfoyle. I loved him on CSI. He was the cop, Jim Brass, which is hilarious because his name was Jim Brass and he was a cop. But I was a big fan of CSI, so it's good to see him back on screen. Okay, so once again, unsurprisingly, I am over time. I'm looking at my notes, by the way. If you keep wondering why I'm looking down here. There were some cool things that I wanted to point out, and it goes back to what I was saying about the mirror universe that, they start from the point that it's kinda dumb, and so they had fun with it. We had some past actors made some cameos, which I loved. I loved Rekha Sharma was back. That was great to see her. Hannah Cheeseman, which I feel like the producers of Discovery are trolling us on the whole Arium thing, and we're gonna come back and find out that Arium is the supreme leader of the entire universe because, of course, the Arium was originally played by Sarah Middich in season 1. Then, which of course you can't tell because of all the prosthetics. Then in season 2, all of a sudden it wasn't Sarah Middich anymore. Sarah Middich had disappeared, and it was Arium was played by Hannah Cheeseman, um, who then got killed off. And then out of nowhere comes Sarah Middich again, but she's not Arium anymore. She's Lieutenant Nilsson. And then this episode they Cheeseman, which was just really nice. I was chuffed to see her in the background of the mess hall. Also, I got to point out that they let Nilsson have her brown hair, which is I've always think it's always looked weird to me. I don't know why Nilsson had blonde hair, and I don't know why she still has blonde hair because the actor Sarah Middich has brown hair. Or at least she does in her publicity photos. So like the blonde hair was always weird to me. Um, no offense to anybody. And also, a more surprising one that I didn't realize until I was scrolling through IMDb, Hannah Spear, who you will remember as Saru's sister, Sarana, came back and made an appearance as Dr. Issa, the Kelpian captain of the ship that was caught in the nebula. And it's possible that like Hannah Spear is going to end up being like Kenneth Mitchell, and like all of the different Kelpians are going to get played by Hannah Spear. I don't know. But it was also, again, it was nice to see her come back. I mean, they had all the prosthetics, they all fit, so that's good. So yeah, and then the big one, you know what I'm talking about. They could not have name dropped Lorca more than they did in this episode. And I'm telling you right now, if they don't bring back Jason Isaacs in the next episode, I'm gonna flip the table. Here's what I hope, because at the time that all of this stuff was going on in the Mirror universe, Mirror Lorca was already in the Prime universe, I think. I can't remember, actually. I have to go back and watch Discovery season 1, because Burnham and Lorca was sleeping together. But then Lorca got swapsies, right? I want to see Prime Lorca in the Mirror universe. It's hope beyond hope, but that's just because I'm a huge Jason Isaacs fan. So we'll see whether that happens. By the way, Jason Isaacs is appearing this weekend. It's in the events blog post on dailystartreknews.com. He is appearing with not with Patrick Stewart, but he and Patrick Stewart are both appearing at an event called Shine a Light. It's put on by ALMEP, which is the Alliance for Middle East Peace, and they're honoring Israeli and Palestinian peacemakers. So if you have a chance to go and check that out or support their organization, please go and do that because it's a good cause. That's all I have. Right. I have ranted long enough. So I'm going to check out what you guys are saying. Okay. Okay. Right. You guys have chatted a lot. Yeah, I've seen some people saying that okay, so you guys BC says the real question, who TF is Carl? Right, that's the whole point. I think it was really good use of casting as well. I think most people are going to recognize Paul Gilfoyle. They may not remember exactly who he is, but he's somebody who has when they use somebody like that as a guest star or as a guest kind of role, it sort of signals that that person has significance. So that's cool. Could be a cue as well. It's very reminiscent of Voyager when they kind of is it Voyager that they meet? No, I'm confusing him with the caretaker, I think. I don't know, could be Q. Seems I was gonna say seems out of character for Q, except for the fact that only our Q, John Delancey Q, is really the one who is a proper trickster. All of the rest of him, them, it just seemed more sort of normal. Paul says this was probably the best Mirror Universe episode of the series so far. I kind of hate all of the Mirror Universe episodes, so I can't say that. And apparently Zach agrees with me, so that's good. Yeah, okay. It actually looks like a lot of us have the same opinions about the Mirror Universe, which is good to see. We can enjoy it together, which is good. Uh, Andrew says, "I wish Mirror Saru had a beard of evil." Yeah, can Kelpians grow a beard? I don't know that they can. I also like the fact that one thing that I didn't mention that I meant to is I like the fact that Saru's kind of crap as a captain. Like he doesn't really know what he's doing, and he's wrong a lot of the time. I think what he brings it's a kind of it's a bit of a breath of fresh air for a Star Trek franchise because the captain is always the smartest person. But Saru does things that make sense and he missteps a lot, but they're doing a really good job of having people teach him lessons and teaching us lessons by proxy about like there's a theme going on about can you guys stay for a few minutes because I want to talk about this. I think it's actually really important. Saru is very by the book. He knows everything there is to know about Starfleet regulation. He's even talked to, we had a discussion with Book about how he needs to read up on Starfleet regulation. And we fall back on regulation. That's what we do when we don't know what to do. And contrast him to Michael Burnham, who's like, she knows the regulations and she ignores them most of the time. She flies by the seat of her pants, even when that means disobeying a direct order. And the traditional model of leadership that we've seen in Star Trek before is really actually a combination of the two. So it's interesting to see Burnham settling down a little bit. We saw that through the Tikal and Ket ceremony. It's also interesting to watch Saru get backed off of his strict sort of regulation thing by the man that he's trying to impress. So when Saru was like, we're not going to do this because there are more priorities. And then to have the Admiral say, you know what, we're going to do this. And then also coach Saru. And I won't say he reprimanded him because he didn't. He coached him on when you need to ignore the regulations a little bit. It's really, really nice to see. It reminds me of the episode of Lower Decks when Rutherford wanted to quit. He wanted to quit his job, and so he went to all the different parts of the ship, and each of the commanding officers was like, "Well, the only thing I have to say about that is it's great, congratulations!" And they were all so supportive of him and that journey. And I remember in the engineering, they were all the what did they call them, the bears, and they were super supportive of him. And he's like, "Oh, bears!" I'm really pleased to see that for Saru. He's somebody with a huge heart and hugely compassionate, and he's smart and he's totally capable, and he's green. He's trying to impress everybody, and so it's nice to watch that coaching process and how both him and Burnham are learning how to be better in their roles. But hashtag rant over. Okay. Yeah. Stress-free K says Owo really shines, and so does Reese to a lesser extent. Yeah, I loved watching Owo beat the crap out of Reese. That was fun. Owo's hot in this episode. I'll just come out and say that. That woman. All right. Yeah. Zach actually points out that Owo and Mira Landry were dead in the first. Um, I don't think they were. They weren't dead yet. Didn't we kill Mira Landry? We killed Mira Landry when we were. I can't remember. I have to go back and watch Discovery season 1, which I really don't want to do. Yeah. Okay. Earl Grey Trekkie points out Jason Isaacs said he would be happy to return to the role if asked. Yeah, he's been saying that since at least last year. I sat in a panel with him at not with him. That would be awesome. No, but I was in the press fit at STLV last year, and I mean he was heavily hinting that like he would absolutely do Prime Lorca, and he's where's Prime Lorca and all this other stuff. So, I think he's cheeky, and I think he likes to mess around with people a little bit. So I wouldn't necessarily read into it, but that would be wonderful. Yeah, Zach mentions about the plotline with Rutherford that solidified Lower Decks for me. Yeah, I know. Sorry, we're diverting from Discovery a little bit, but to talk about Lower Decks, yeah, Lower Decks. I remember in that episode thinking, "Wow, this is the most Star Trek that's come out since TNG finished." Full stop. Right. I have nothing more to say. Oh, I do. Number one, shout out to the aerial performers in Star Trek Discovery. I love that they just went totally over the top with that. That was wonderful. Number two, that freaking headdress was incredible. And I bet you it was actually in real life about that big because Michelle Yeoh is tiny. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have. That's all of my notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, sorry it's a little bit long, but we had a lot to talk about. I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate you chatting, and hopefully this time next week, who knows what we're going to be talking about. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. So before we go, I just want to remind you that if you haven't subscribed to the channel, if you haven't liked this video, please do both of those things because it helps other people. It helps other people discover the channel, and then my goal is to get it so that it is so heavy with chat that like I can't even follow it. And then you'll have to actually write to me on Twitter or something. So yeah, there's that. Also, if you are able to, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Anything that you can do will help, or even just sharing this video, that helps too. And that's it. I'm going to finish my coffee in my gigantic mug. It's almost as big as my head. And I wanted to show off something. I'm sorry. I woke up like an hour before this live stream, and I feel very discombobulated. I found this. It was missing. And then I found it, and I was like, you know what? I want to show it off because it's very cool. And it's also to commemorate the fact that Star Trek Online they've just launched their winter event for this year, which was always my favorite sort of tentpole event that they did. If you don't already play Star Trek Online, you should go check it out. Q's Winter Wonderland. I actually did a music video. You can find it somewhere on the internet for Q's Winterland because I love it that much. I sadly do not have a PC that can play Star Trek Online anymore, and the Xbox is in far too hot of competition, so I really haven't played in forever. But this was I visited Cryptic Studios. Gosh, last year must have been. Yeah, it was last February, I think. And this is like a little 3D printed model that I picked up while I was there. It's very cool. Star Trek Online is where it's at. It's very cool. And yeah. Never know how to end these things. I will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in, and have a lovely weekend. Live long and prosper.